What are things racist people do that they don't think is racist? You look like you're mixed with something. It's so exotic. When I was younger, I used to hear this comment all the time from white guys licking their lips like they were about to sample some kinda new ice cream flavor. They actually looked deflated when I told them I am white, and they'd press till I clarified I was of German, English descent, and would sometimes just leave me alone, walk away like they needed to catch up on lost time to complete their Yule Conquest bingo card. I got that a lot when I was a server. I'm as white as a mayo cream cheese salad both ethnically and culturally, so it was weird every time it happened. I got Hispanic, Chinese most often, and overall Asian. After a while, I figured out it was because I had black hair pulled into a super tight ponytail. Still doesn't make a ton of sense. Every single table felt like they could grill me on my parents, extended family, and culture. I didn't have anything to share OFC, but the constant intrusion and people just thinking they're entitled to know everything about someone is insane. As someone from a severely singularly toned town, I literally cried when visiting a big city for the first time in years. I went to a tourist attraction, and all the races melt together over shared joys, and the racist nonsense I have to hear back home dare not be said, so everyone was just together, enjoying life. I'm from a large city originally, and used to be the minority in my neighborhoods. I miss seeing people who are different than myself. I love the variety of humans and our cultures and differences that are arbitrary when compared to the things that truly unite us. To me, your skin is just the outfit your parents chose for you. I like it. I love your features that combine the two people whose connection ultimately lead to your loveliness. When I see mixed people, I see the strength of love that overcame the skin suits society sometimes says we have to wear a certain way and only with the same suits. I also see the struggle, the pain society puts onto these people who cannot be easily labeled for the benefit of society, but who are beautiful and wonderful examples of evolution, love, and uniqueness. As no two people are identical, what difference made you so special? Mine are XYZ and Hij, but I like to go by Jinxie. Is it wrong to love all the races in all their forms? Is it wrong to share kindness without strings of negative judgment attached? Perhaps society needs to learn to be genuinely kind, not just PC kind, and then attempted kindnesses will not come off as insulting. I'm a white dude that has lived in Japan for 16 years. A while back I went on a date with a Japanese girl and we went to a bar in central Tokyo. The bar wouldn't let me in because I wasn't Japanese. This has happened to me a million times since I've lived here, so I'm used to it, and it doesn't upset me anymore. However, the girl got really upset, and after we were rejected from the bar she said, "I don't know why they wouldn't let you in. You were with me, I'm Japanese." And I was thinking, you're kind of missing the point. Can you imagine if a white and black dude went to a bar together in the States and they don't let the black dude in and the white guy says, "I can't believe they didn't let you in. You're with me, I'm white." I've even called the cops on a club once that had a sign in Japanese that said Japanese only. The cops came and I complained and the cops said in a super friendly tone, "Well, yeah, the sign says Japanese only, and you're not Japanese. What is the problem here? There's another club down the street that allows foreigners. I like that one myself. Why don't you go check that one out?" Japan is so inherently racist and xenophobic to the point that they don't even know that they are racist and xenophobic. It's just normal behavior to them, but for some reason everybody loves Japan, and they somehow get a free pass on it. Oh, and full disclosure, I ended up marrying the girl that I went a date with from the first story above. Now we're racist to each other all the time. It's super fun. I'm an attractive, fit white person. I've had a lot of bullying experiences and ist experiences, but when I visited Japan, it was the first time I experienced racism personally. I consider myself a very accepting person who celebrates diversity. I thought I was very empathetic towards people who experience racism. Well, I definitely did not understand how much and now I have greater empathy towards people in my community who deal with that every day. I am Asian. I could pass for a Japanese. I went to a bar in Singapore. I was welcomed in with Japanese. I poorly requested a table for 5 in Japanese, then said I will be back with my friends. I bring my friends who are all from a different background, but mostly non-Asian. They brought us in and we were kicked off after I changed to English because frankly my Japanese doesn't go that far and they kicked us out. They said they thought I was Japanese, and that's the only reason they let me friends in. How can they be fucking xenophobes even in different country? I'm Chinese, and I think we are pretty much the only people that get to see Japanese as what they really are. Vile racists with a really warped perspective of how the world is to be perceived. They usually are all naughty with white people, so you guys get the nice treatment. But for me, it's like seeing people who look more or less just like me glare at me with the ugliest, dirtiest faces everywhere I go, and make annoying comments about everything I do. It's annoying AF, and I hate being around them. It's a good thing that they are a culture of recluse, so they're not always out and about. And before anyone brings the "what about Chinese tourists" thing, I just want to say that ignorance is not the same as hate. Ignorance can be educated and taught. Hate is inherently a Japanese thing. My daughter, who is Mexican, went over to her friend's house to have dinner with their family. They had your normal American dishes while the mother specially made her Mexican food. It can be both at the same time. Good intentions, but inappropriate. I once visited an Asian friend in Vancouver, a gaming friend in like 2004, when I was in high school, which was a 4-hour drive away. It was really cool. He showed me bubble tea. Then his family brought me out to a restaurant, where they brought out different servings of stuff, like raw sushi type things, beef tongue and stuff. It was really cool. But when we went there, he said to me, "You know, they also have a salad bar because you are white, so it's okay." And I was like, haha, nah, I'm gonna be fine. The second we enter the store, 2 different people working there pointed me to the salad bar. I did not know this was a thing. It is not done with bad intentions. Of course, they have the salad bar for white people who go there but can't deal with the other food. That is totally legit. If most white people plus 4 Asian people have the white guy go for the salad instead, it makes sense to point it out. But I felt a bit like, Simon, don't single me out so much. I loved the food and I would never have a salad out of spite specifically, because I was offered it multiple times because I'm not Asian. Innocent example, I would label it as just a bit awkward about accommodating racial differences rather than racist. It's racist because none of them were eating the Mexican food, only their Mexican daughter was served a whole different plate. So, instead of making the same dinner for everyone, the Mexican is singled out by giving them a completely different dinner. If it's that much of a big deal or trying to be well-meaning, just fucking talk to them beforehand and ask if they have any food allergies. Simply omit any food allergies and serve everyone the same thing. Boom! Easy. No need to make a whole new special single plate. It's literally inclusion by exclusion. Reminds me of when I went to my Indian friend's house and they all had delicious curries and his mom made me chicken nuggets and chips. When I was invited over next time, I asked if I could just have what they were having. Yeah, it was delicious, but my mouth was on fire. 25 years later, and I'll always go for the spiciest thing on the menu or request something to be made extra spicy. This is a long one. I had a coworker when I was a manager in a major retailer. We were running a project that required third-party hiring. Well, in this team was a group of 7 POC who rode together for work. Whenever I was around, they were hard-working and quick to listen. But whenever I was at a different location or off for a few days, I would come back and this manager would brief me on how things went, and every time she would bring up how terrible and rude and lazy this group was. And when I would go out to the floor, they would greet me with things like, "Thank God you're back. We were about to quit." It went on like this until one day I was coming back, halfway through shift, and the group was leaving, clearly pissed off. Said they couldn't stand her racist anymore. Apparently she accused them of being disrespectful and probably stealing like you people do. They ended up filing a case and reporting her. I was told I was gonna have to provide testimony as the only other manager present. Right before I got on the call, she actually said, "You know I'm not racist. I have even dated a darkie." I was floored. I held nothing back in the testimony. Unbelievable. I briefly worked as a hiring manager at a solar company where the upper management acted like this. I would pick the people who knew their pitch, showed confidence, was able to hold a convo off script, etc. The general manager would be prejudiced against black people, especially black women. She would say things like, "Hey, I don't think she'd make a good fit here," or "She doesn't seem like the type of girl who would do well in the sales department," and it was every single black woman who applied without asking me how her pitch was. asking interviewers how she answered questions, and barely even talking to the lady herself. After I quit, they laid off a few people who weren't doing their job well, but they also removed her without notice when her sales numbers were decent as anyone else who continued working there. Crazy stupid. I'm glad she's out of there, and I hope their company fails. When I was in junior high-ish, I went with my dad to his work on a weekend day. He was a plant manager. There were a couple other guys there, and the three of them were discussing some grievance someone had filed. I think my dad had fired a person of color, and that person filed a grievance. I recall them talking about paperwork my dad has to file. One of the other guys said, don't like darkies for the reason for termination, and I recall my dad looking in my direction and shaking his head. So essentially, that day I found out my dad was racist because racists felt they could talk that way around him, and I think him shaking his head was him telling them it wasn't okay to say that around me, presumably to hide that fact from me. There's a lot of those people in Canada with the Indigenous. I'm all for helping support Indigenous communities because Canada did faff them over, but I know this one white girl who is so fucking annoying with it. All she does is post things on Facebook about how awful we all are because Canada did faffed up things to the Indigenous. I tried having a conversation with her about this, and she told me that the Indigenous were peaceful tribesmen that spent their days hunting and foraging, and lived harmoniously before the white man came and stole their land and ate all who resisted. She wasn't too happy when I told her that her description of the Indigenous communities of Canada was highly offensive, and largely resembled the noble savage stereotype that has been crafted over the years. She also refused to believe when I told her that the Indigenous lived in sophisticated societies, not all lived in huts but actual buildings, and engaged in trade and war with other tribes. Totally agree. Some of the white guilt liberal types sound absolutely racist when they start talking about the challenges minority groups face. There is a difference between acknowledging the shortcomings of our society and invoking every negative stereotype about that culture's upbringing as justification that they should all be given a proverbial booster seat. Sure, make booster seats available for people who got shafted in some way. But Quentin is 6'2" and doing really good on his own if he says no to booster seats, end of story. We don't need to call him courageous or applaud overcoming barriers unless that's something he chooses to talk about. This seems like a mad thing to do, but unfortunately a lot of us sheltered white people of a certain age were pushed into this attitude by the education we received. I distinctly remember being assigned this book called Maniac Magee in 4th grade English. It was about a white boy who moved to a segregated town, knew nothing about racism, made friends with some black kids, and single-handedly ended an institutional apartheid with the power of his innocence and superior athletic ability, while the smart black girl watched and tried to discourage him. The book was written by an old white guy called Jerry Spinelli. At the time we read it, we had no black kids in my entire grade. Whenever I hear people talk about white savior complexes, I think about that class and that book. It's tricky. I think there's a fine line between being a patronizing white savior and being an ally or someone who uses your position of privilege to push for change awareness. On one hand, systematic injustices against black people won't be addressed unless white people acknowledge them and join forces to work against them. On the other hand, white people defining injustices they've never experienced and dictating the terms by which they should be addressed, like a parent defending their child against an unfair teacher, is patronizing and maybe even a bit racist, depending on the context. I think there's a lot of gray area, and a lot of missteps are the result of a huge increase in white people who genuinely want to be allies but don't always know how to navigate what role their voice should play in any given situation. I'm speaking from the perspective of a white guy who doesn't always know the right balance. In general, my response to my own uncertainty is to listen more than talk and to acknowledge to myself and in conversations that I'm speaking from the perspective of a white person who listens but doesn't have first-hand experience with the things I hear about. Assuming any minority with nice things got them with government welfare, drug dealing, or all the money they save from not having to pay taxes because they are illegal immigrants, and make good money, also no kids in the house anymore, and when she talked about where she lived at work, her colleagues said stuff like, "Are you sure? I don't think you have the right neighborhood in mind." So 1, they though she was too dumb to remember where she lives, and 2, they thought it was impossible for someone like her to live in a nice house in a wealthy neighborhood. She has an accent and some trouble with grammar because it's extremely difficult to learn our country's language from her language of origin, and since she's also black, her colleagues found it fair to assume that she was unintelligent and incapable of proper living conditions. This is in one of the most progressive countries of Europe. I live in a very nice area, as my boyfriend and I both make 6 figures. My boyfriend is very white passing but dresses like a college skater, so he's gotten one. Do you live here? Is that your car? Meanwhile, I, very not white passing, can't even get someone to help me at the mall because they think I can't afford a $100 shirt or something. I get stares all the time no matter what I'm wearing, work or normal clothes, and at my college, people seem to be afraid of me there. I'll sit next to someone, and they'll ask everyone around them for a pencil besides me. 2 people have initiated a convo with me for a group exercise. No one at my gym talks to me, but all the girls there are friends and at least talk to one another and to my boyfriend. This other walk started going, and I've never seen someone talk to her either. I guess I should try, but I'm very awkward and can't even tell the guy that lives in the same apartment hi. I get really intimidated around such a homogeneous group, because I know they're assuming I'm one of the lucky ones that got out of my terrible situation and don't know how to act. I am a very lucky girl to have the life I do, but that's across all standards and not because I'm brown. I feel like they think I'm mean or rude. I try not to take my shirt off at the gym because I don't want them to think I look too masculine. I have abs and back muscles, even though many girls at my gym do. Also, none of the guys so much as second glances me, which is very odd for me that they think I'm just utterly unattractive. It makes me feel bad. I think most people there are uncomfortable with me and don't know how to interact with POC, so they're not racist but very ignorant. And they know that, so they just try not to interact at all because don't want to racist. While I get it's from a place of fear of offending me, it's still svcacscccccccccccs that the color of my skin is the main factor people think about when approaching me. It's very lonely. The whole not paying taxes thing always gets me. If you don't have a record of paying taxes, you can't do practically anything financially to get ahead. People with money get so much back from their taxes. They get their mortgage subsidized to incentives them to own a home. Small businesses get to write practically anything off. If you don't pay taxes because you're not a citizen, then you don't get Social Security, Medicare. You can't get a loan to own property. You can't invest in retirement accounts. The real crime is the ultra-wealthy billionaires who complain about paying practically nothing compared to the rest of us. We all pay 25 minus 30 of our income to taxes and corporations. And billionaires effectively pay nothing after all of loopholes and tax-dodging techniques they employ. It's an absolute travesty. That's what people should be upset about. If there is one stereotype I'd like to break in my time left on this world, it's the idea that undocumented people in the US don't pay taxes. They pay more taxes. To work anywhere in the US, you have to have a Social Security number or you have to be working under the table. If you acquire a fake SSN, then your employer is contributing taxes to a Social Security account that will never pay out. It may be the thing that's kept Social Security solvent for the last decade. And of course, the vast majority of taxes we pay, especially for local purposes like transit, roads, schools, police, fire protection, are paid through sales tax and property tax. Do they ask you for your immigration status when they charge you sales tax on a new TV? No! Does the city waive your sewer and water fees if you acknowledge being an illegal immigrant? Of course not! Since undocumented people can't access all the same public benefits as citizens, and many of them intend to return home eventually or send their income home to support someone there, then they are mostly contributing to a tax base that they will not personally benefit from. It's their home countries that get screwed on taxes. We get the windfall. If we stop immigration of Latino people, who will clean the toilets? Paraphrased quote from Kelly Osbourne trying to be woke. I do think Kelly wasn't saying Latinos should only clean toilets. My problem is it seems like she's saying we should continue to let Latinos in, so they can continue to clean our toilets, being underpaid. Do the Thai jobs no one else will do because they don't have a choice. What she should have been aiming for is to say, why can't we be humanitarian and respect these hard-working people's right to a better life? Make legal immigration easier, provide education, training, and support so they can become and have better jobs. What if we provided more aid to the people currently living in their own countries so they don't need to flee? That's why it's racist. Because she's saying what's happening now is okay. We should not be condoning the status quo. Her reason for accepting immigrants because surely no white American will want to clean my toilet for exploitative low wage, and we need someone to do it. I know you're joking, but this is actually true in California. The real reason the Democrats keep sanctuary cities and LA and SF open for undocumented migrants is specifically because our entire farming industry relies heavily on undocumented workers getting paid pennies or hour because they're paid by bushels of harvest. California knows the whereabouts of all the undocumented migrants here. I had a classmate growing up who himself is one, but pretty much every farm, restaurant, hotel, menial labor, construction, etc. would be belly up if everyone was deported. Forgot to add that even the undocumented migrants who work other jobs pay state, fed income and sales tax just like everyone else. I mean, she's not wrong. I've worked a lot of construction jobs and 99% of framers, sheetrockers are Latino. 99% of concrete or asphalt or tar guys. Roofers in general. Janitors are actually pretty multi-ethnic, but actual cleaning service like housekeeping or job site detailing contractors. Brown or black almost exclusively. It's not unreasonable to say that certain professions are largely staffed by certain ethnic groups because of economic inequalities and fewer opportunities. Her point, I assume, was that people wanting to ban immigrants aren't even appreciative of how dependent their daily lives are on the exploitation of the vulnerable. Same problem with people denying higher wages and saying those jobs are for teenagers. As if that matters. But even if it did, okay, now all your retail outlets and restaurants are only open from PM to PM so kids can get a full night's sleep, study, etc., right? If I were in her shoes, I'd have phrased this more artfully, but it isn't remotely racist. One of the main reasons the immigration system in the US is so messed up is that we have this huge undocumented class of persons that drive the service and food production economy. There isn't a governing coalition to make meaningful reforms because two significant cohorts of the pro-restrictionist party, which currently at least is the GOP, are completely at odds, corporate interests and lowest laborers. And leaders of the less restrictionist party have to reconcile the facts that demographic change will give them an advantage as the GOP becomes increasingly ethnically homogeneous and lowest black laborers, who suffer from wage competition, are reliable Democratic voters. Neither party has both clearly aligned interests among its base and a solution. Every single one of us grew up with some toxic ideas in infinite topics. It's a not shame to be ignorant, but it is a shame to remain purposely so when presented with new information offering you an opportunity to grow. I'd argue that it's a good thing to look back and feel uncomfortable about past behavior as it means you've grown past believing that was acceptable. If you didn't feel uncomfortable about it, it would mean you don't have the capacity or desire for self-reflection, and that would be an issue. I think the biggest takeaway of growth is to be humble about the fact there is more knowledge in the world we will ever be able to individually know, and do be confident but tread lightly as one day you might learn new information. And secondly, to be adaptable so that when that new information is presented to you, you'll be able to recognize your error and adjust your mindset. All that to say, it sounds like you've grown from your past, and that's a good thing. Keep at it. We grow up learning to mimic what we hear. It's not until we're older that we have opportunities to understand, grow, and make changes to be better. Growing up for me included making a lot of gay jokes, or using "that's gay" to say something was bad, but now I know better. I still occasionally use what I'll call the R word for stuff, which also isn't okay. But I do the whole, only in company that is okay with it. I definitely know that's not appropriate. But it's kind of a weird thing to let go when you don't see how it can affect people. Not justifying it, it's wrong, but we're trying to get beyond it.